Some sentences don't change a conversation. They change everything that comes after it. The sound of crystal glasses and quiet laughter drifted through the Grand Regent Hotel like a carefully rehearsed symphony. Manhattan glittered beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, a sea of lights stretching for miles beneath the cold November sky. At the center of the private dining room sat Nathan Blackwell, a billionaire whose name appeared on business magazines so often that most people recognized him before they heard him speak. He wore a charcoal suit tailored so perfectly it seemed carved onto him. A Swiss watch rested beneath his cuff. Every few minutes, its polished face caught the light. Around him sat executives, attorneys, and international investors. Nobody interrupted Nathan Blackwell. Nobody surprised him. And nobody, under any circumstance, made him stand up during a negotiation. Yet 43 minutes into the evening, Nathan suddenly pushed back his chair and rose to his feet so quickly that several guests nearly dropped their glasses. The room fell silent. Not because he shouted. Not because anyone was arguing. Because a waitress had just whispered 7 words into his ear. 7 simple words. And whatever those words were, they changed everything. Hours earlier, nobody had noticed Emily Carter. That was normal. Emily had mastered the art of becoming invisible. At 27, she moved through crowded rooms without drawing attention. She carried trays with steady hands. She remembered names, drink preferences, and seating arrangements better than most managers. But guests rarely remembered her. To them, she was simply another waitress in a black uniform moving between tables. Emily preferred it that way. Invisible people heard things. They noticed things. They learned things. The dinner that night had been planned for months. Nathan's company was preparing to finalize a partnership expected to generate hundreds of millions of dollars over the next decade. Reporters weren't allowed inside. Phones were discouraged. Every detail had been controlled. The menu, the lighting, the guest list, even the music floating softly through hidden speakers. Nathan liked certainty. He built his fortune on it. Across the room, Emily refilled a water glass and quietly studied the guests. Not in a curious way, in a careful way. Years of working in high-end restaurants had taught her that people revealed themselves when they believed nobody was paying attention. A nervous glance, a forced smile, a hand gripping a glass too tightly. The signs were always there. Most people simply missed them. A burst of laughter rose from Nathan's table. One investor slapped another on the shoulder. A deal seemed close. Everyone looked relaxed. Everyone except one man. He sat 3 seats away from Nathan. Impeccably dressed. Calm on the surface. Yet every few minutes his eyes drifted toward the same spot near the window. Then toward his watch. Then back again. Emily noticed it once. Then twice. Then a third time. The pattern repeated. Her brow tightened slightly. Something felt off. She couldn't explain why. The man continued smiling whenever someone looked at him. But the smile never reached his eyes. Emily carried a tray of sparkling water toward the table. As she approached, fragments of conversation floated through the air. Numbers. Deadlines. Expansion plans. Nothing unusual. Then she heard a brief exchange between 2 guests. Soft. Fast. Almost impossible to catch beneath the surrounding noise. Emily froze for half a second. The tray remained perfectly balanced in her hands. 1 sentence. That was all it took. Her pulse quickened. She continued walking as if nothing had happened. No change in expression. No sign of concern. She set down the glasses one by one. The investors barely noticed her presence. Nathan was reviewing a document while someone explained final projections. Everything appeared normal. Yet Emily's mind replayed those words again and again. She knew exactly what she had heard. And if she was right, someone at this table was about to make a mistake they would never forget. She stepped back from the table, hesitated, then took a slow breath. For several seconds, she considered walking away. After all, she was only a waitress. Nobody had asked for her opinion. Nobody expected her to speak. But sometimes silence carried its own cost. Emily looked toward Nathan Blackwell, the billionaire who never seemed surprised. The man whose decisions affected thousands of employees across the country. Then she made her choice. She walked forward once more, leaned slightly closer, and quietly spoke 7 words that nobody else in the room could hear. Nathan's eyes widened. The color drained from his face. And before anyone could understand what was happening, he stood up. The silence lasted less than 3 seconds, but to everyone in the room it felt much longer. Nathan Blackwell remained standing, his eyes fixed on Emily, as if she had suddenly become the most important person in Manhattan. The executives exchanged confused glances. One attorney slowly lowered his pen. Across the table, the investor who had been smiling moments earlier seemed to stiffen almost imperceptibly. Emily said nothing more. She simply stood beside the table with the same calm expression she had worn all evening. Nathan looked at her for a long moment before speaking. "Are you certain?" he asked quietly. Emily nodded once. "Absolutely." The room grew even quieter. Nathan rarely asked for confirmation. He was known for making decisions quickly, trusting his instincts and expecting everyone else to keep up. Yet now he looked almost cautious. That alone made several people uneasy. "Excuse us for a moment," Nathan finally said. He gathered the documents in front of him and closed the folder. The sharp sound echoed through the room. "I need 10 minutes. Nobody argued. Nobody asked questions. They simply watched as Nathan walked toward a private conference room near the back of the dining area. For a brief second, he glanced over his shoulder. "Miss Carter, come with me." Emily felt dozens of eyes turn toward her at once. She could practically hear the questions forming in their minds. Who was she? What had she said? Why was Nathan Blackwell listening to a waitress? Yet she offered no explanation. She followed him through the room, her black shoes making almost no sound against the polished floor. The conference room door closed behind them. Outside, conversation exploded immediately. Inside, there was only silence. Nathan placed both hands on the table and studied her carefully. "Tell me exactly what you heard." Emily remained standing. "The gentleman seated 3 chairs from you spoke briefly to the man beside him." Nathan nodded. "I know." He thought nobody understood him. And Emily took a slow breath. The language was not unusual. The wording was. Nathan watched her closely. "Go on." It was not a business comment. Her voice remained calm. It was a warning. Nathan's eyes narrowed. A warning about what? Emily hesitated. Not because she doubted herself. Because she understood how unbelievable it sounded. About the contract. Nathan said nothing. Outside the windows, rain began tapping softly against the glass. Tiny drops of water traced silver lines down the skyline. Emily noticed the sound immediately. She always noticed small things. That habit had followed her entire life. Most people focused on what was loud. Emily focused on what was quiet. Nathan straightened. "You are not a lawyer." "No, you are not part of my company." "No, then how do you know there is a problem?" Emily looked toward the city lights. For a moment, she seemed far away. Because people reveal more than they intend when they think nobody is listening. Nathan folded his arms. "That is not an answer." A faint smile touched her face. "It is the only answer I can give right now." Nathan stared at her. Normally that response would have irritated him. Yet something about Emily Carter made irritation impossible. She did not sound arrogant. She did not sound frightened. She sounded certain. And certainty was difficult to ignore. Across the room, a silver coffee pot reflected the city lights. Nathan glanced at it briefly before returning his attention to Emily. "Tell me something honestly." "All right. Who are you?" For the first time all evening, Emily looked away. The question lingered between them. Not because she could not answer it. Because the truthful answer was far more complicated than anyone in that hotel could imagine. Emily lowered her eyes briefly. As though searching through years of memories she rarely allowed herself to revisit. Rain continued tapping against the glass. Behind her, the city lights blurred into soft streaks of gold and silver. Nathan waited. He was not a patient man by nature, but something told him rushing this conversation would be a mistake. "I am a waitress," Emily finally said. Nathan almost laughed. "That is not what I meant." "I know." Her voice remained calm. "But it is the truth." Nathan studied her face. Most people became uncomfortable when he looked at them that way. Executives shifted in their seats. Competitors lost confidence. Negotiators revealed weaknesses. Emily did none of those things. She simply met his gaze. Steady, unmoved. "You understood a conversation that none of my advisors noticed," Nathan said. "You recognized a problem in a contract you have never seen." Emily remained silent. "And you expect me to believe that is coincidence?" A faint smile appeared. "No." Nathan walked toward the window. 30 floors below, traffic flowed through Manhattan like streams of red and white light. Somewhere in the distance, a ferry moved slowly across the dark water of the Hudson River. The city never stopped moving. Neither did Nathan. Yet tonight felt different. For the first time in years, he felt as though he had encountered something he could not immediately understand. Then help me understand, he said quietly. Emily folded her hands in front of her. When I was younger, I spent a lot of time studying languages. Nathan turned. How many? She shrugged slightly. Enough. That is not a number. 6 fluently. A few others well enough. Nathan stared at her. 6. Languages are not as difficult as people think. Most people struggle to learn one. Emily looked toward the conference room door. Voices from the dining room drifted faintly through the walls. Most people stop listening after words, she said. Languages are not just words. They are habits, patterns, assumptions. People reveal themselves through all 3. Nathan felt an unexpected chill. Not fear. Recognition. He knew pattern recognition. His entire business empire had been built on seeing opportunities before others did. Yet Emily spoke about people the same way he spoke about markets. You noticed something specific. Tonight, he said. Yes. What? Emily hesitated. The man near the window was nervous long before he spoke. Nathan remembered immediately. The investor who kept checking his watch. I noticed that too. You noticed it? Emily nodded. I paid attention to it. Nathan could not argue with that. There was a difference. A significant one. She continued. His words were concerning. But his behavior concerned me first. Nathan walked back toward the table. Then tell me exactly what he said. Emily looked directly at him. He said the timing had changed. Nathan frowned. That is all. No, then what else? Emily took a slow breath. He also said your signature would make the next step easy. Silence settled between them again. Nathan felt his stomach tighten. The phrase itself sounded harmless. Yet something in Emily's tone suggested otherwise. Why does that matter? He asked. Because it was not business language. Meaning nobody discussing a partnership worth hundreds of millions of dollars would describe a contract that way. Nathan considered that. She was right. Experienced investors discussed leverage, equity, structure, risk. Nobody called it the next step. Not in a room like this. Emily continued. It sounded like someone talking about an objective, not a partnership. The room seemed smaller suddenly. Nathan glanced toward the closed door. For the first time that evening, uncertainty entered his mind. Emily noticed the change immediately. She always noticed. Then Nathan's phone vibrated on the table. One message appeared on the screen. It came from his chief legal officer. 3 words. We found something. Nathan slowly looked back at Emily Carter. And for the second time that night, he realized the waitress had been right. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. The faint glow from Nathan's phone illuminated the message on the screen. 3 words. Simple words. Yet they carried more weight than the hundreds of pages of legal documents sitting outside in the dining room. Nathan picked up the phone and read the message again. We found something. His chief legal officer was not a man who used dramatic language. He did not speculate. He did not exaggerate. If he said they had found something, then they had found something. Nathan slowly lowered the phone. Emily remained standing across from him. Calm, patient, almost as if she had expected this outcome from the beginning. What did they find? She asked quietly. Nathan looked at her. You seem surprisingly confident. Confidence and certainty are not the same thing. A faint smile crossed his face. That sounds rehearsed. It is not. Outside, the rain intensified. Water streaked across the massive windows overlooking Manhattan. The city lights shimmered beneath the storm like reflections on dark glass. Nathan pressed a button on his phone and called his legal officer immediately. The line connected after the first ring. Tell me. The voice on the other end sounded tense. We reviewed the revised appendix attached to the final agreement. Nathan's expression hardened. And there is an ownership transfer clause buried inside a secondary authorization schedule. Nathan said nothing. Emily watched carefully. How significant? Nathan asked. Very significant. If signed as written, it would eventually allow external voting control under specific expansion conditions. Nathan's jaw tightened. He knew exactly what that meant. Not today, not tomorrow, but eventually. Enough leverage to influence the future of the company he had spent 20 years building. How did we miss it? He asked. The legal officer hesitated. The language is unusual, technically legal, but structured in a way that redirects attention toward other sections. Nathan glanced toward Emily. Understood. Stay on it. He ended the call. Silence returned. Only the rain remained. Emily did not ask what the lawyer had said. She already knew. Nathan stared at the conference table. Hundreds of negotiations. Thousands of meetings. Entire industries had underestimated him. Yet tonight someone had almost succeeded because he had been looking in the wrong direction. Not at the contract. At the people around it. You saved me from signing that. Emily shook her head. Your legal team saved you. Only because you noticed something first. She did not answer. Nathan studied her carefully. The more he learned, the less sense she made. Waitresses did not analyze behavioral patterns during billion-dollar negotiations. Waitresses did not identify subtle linguistic inconsistencies between international investors. Waitresses certainly did not predict legal concerns before attorneys discovered them. Yet Emily Carter had done all three. A knock sounded at the conference room door. Nathan's assistant stepped inside. Sir, everyone is waiting. Nathan nodded. Give us another 5 minutes. The assistant hesitated. Some of the investors are becoming concerned. Good, Nathan said. Let them be concerned. The door closed again. Emily looked toward him. You are going to stop the signing. Absolutely. That will create questions. Nathan laughed softly. Questions are cheaper than mistakes. For the first time that evening, Emily smiled. Not a polite smile. A genuine one. It appeared briefly before disappearing again. Nathan noticed. Somehow that small expression felt more revealing than everything else she had said. He leaned back slightly. There is something else bothering me. Emily raised an eyebrow. Only one thing. You heard one sentence and connected it to a hidden clause that attorneys missed. Not exactly. Nathan frowned. Then what am I missing? Emily looked toward the rain-covered skyline. Her eyes narrowed slightly as though examining a memory. The sentence was not the reason I became concerned. Nathan stared at her. It was not. She slowly shook her head. No. Then what was? Emily took a breath. The person who said it. Nathan felt a chill run through him. Because the certainty in her voice suggested she knew far more about that investor than she had revealed so far. Nathan did not speak immediately. He simply watched Emily, waiting for her to continue. Outside, the rain drummed softly against the glass. Inside, the conference room seemed isolated from the rest of Manhattan. The city kept moving. The negotiations outside continued waiting. Yet all of Nathan's attention remained fixed on the woman standing across from him. You know him, Nathan finally said. It was not a question. Emily lowered her eyes briefly. Not personally. Then how? She hesitated. Several years ago, I came across his name while researching a different project. Nathan noticed the careful wording. Not researching him. Researching a project. The distinction mattered. What kind of project? Emily looked toward the window. The kind that required paying attention to people who preferred not to be noticed. Nathan frowned. The answer only deepened the mystery. Before he could ask another question, his phone vibrated again. A second message appeared from the legal team. This one was longer. Nathan read it carefully. Then he read it again. The hidden clause was not the only concern. Several supporting documents had originated from shell entities connected through a chain of overseas registrations. Everything appeared legal on the surface. Yet the structure was unusually complicated. Far more complicated than necessary. Nathan slowly lowered the phone. This keeps getting worse. Emily nodded slightly. Complexity is often a disguise. Nathan looked at her sharply. That sounds like experience talking. Maybe. You have an answer for everything, do you not? For the first time, Emily laughed softly. It was a genuine laugh. Brief. Unexpected. Not even close. Nathan found himself smiling despite the circumstances. It surprised him. He rarely smiled during negotiations. Especially not during negotiations that had nearly gone sideways. Yet Emily's calm presence seemed to alter the atmosphere around her. Nothing about her felt performative. Nothing felt calculated. She simply observed the world differently. A knock interrupted the moment. The door opened, and Nathan's assistant stepped inside again. This time she looked genuinely concerned. Sir, the investors are asking whether the signing is still happening tonight. Nathan glanced at Emily, then back at his assistant. No, her eyes widened slightly. Should I inform everyone? Yes. What reason should I give? Nathan paused. Tell them additional review is required. She nodded and left. The door closed. Silence returned. Somewhere beyond the walls, conversations would already be starting. Questions. Speculation. Frustration. Nathan knew exactly how such rooms behaved when certainty disappeared. Yet none of that concerned him at the moment. Something else did. He looked at Emily. When you first heard that sentence tonight, What made you pay attention? Emily folded her arms lightly. Because it contradicted everything else. Meaning, people reveal themselves through consistency. Nathan listened carefully. The investor spent 2 hours presenting himself as patient, collaborative, and confident. That sounds accurate. Then his private behavior should have matched. Nathan slowly nodded. Emily continued. Instead, he checked his watch every few minutes. He monitored exits. He watched reactions instead of participating in conversations. His words suggested confidence. His behavior suggested urgency. Nathan felt something click into place. Not because of the legal issue, because of the psychology behind it. Emily was not simply translating language. She was translating people. You noticed all of that while serving tables? He asked. Serving tables gives you an excellent view of human nature. Nathan stared at her. Most people would have answered with pride. Emily answered with simple honesty. And somehow that made her observations even harder to dismiss. Then his phone vibrated a third time. This time the message came from a private investigator Nathan occasionally hired for corporate due diligence. There was only one sentence. We have seen this name before. Nathan's eyes narrowed. Slowly, he looked back at Emily Carter. Because for the third time that night, reality was moving in the exact direction she had quietly predicted. The message lingered on Nathan's screen long after he finished reading it. We have seen this name before. For simple words. Yet they carried enough weight to erase any remaining doubt. Nathan slowly placed the phone on the conference table and looked toward Emily. She noticed the change immediately. His posture had shifted. The confidence of a businessman managing a negotiation had become the focus of a man solving a puzzle. Bad news? Emily asked. Nathan exhaled slowly. Potentially. He tapped the screen with one finger. A private investigator I trust recognized the investor's name. Emily remained quiet. He says there is a history. What kind of history? Nathan shook his head. Not enough details yet. Rain continued sliding down the windows behind them. The skyline shimmered beneath the storm. Across the river, lights reflected on dark water like scattered stars. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Nathan leaned back in his chair and studied Emily again. You knew something was wrong before anyone else. I suspected something. You keep saying that. Nathan folded his arms. Most people would call it expertise. Emily smiled faintly. Most people would be wrong. Nathan found that answer strangely frustrating. Every time he thought he was getting closer to understanding her, she moved the conversation in another direction. Yet there was no arrogance in her voice. Only restraint. Years of restraint. Tell me something, he said. All right. Why are you working here? Emily blinked. At a hotel? As a waitress. The question settled between them. Outside, a distant flash of lightning illuminated the clouds for a brief moment. Not dramatic. Just enough to brighten the room before fading away. Emily looked down at the polished conference table. Because it pays the bills. Nathan almost laughed. That is the most incomplete answer I have heard all night. Maybe. You speak multiple languages. You analyze people better than most executives I know. You recognized a problem before attorneys and consultants. He leaned forward. You are not here because carrying plates was your lifelong dream. Emily looked at him for several seconds before answering. Life changes. Nathan did not interrupt. Sometimes people end up somewhere they never expected. Her voice remained calm, but something deeper moved beneath the surface. A memory. A disappointment. Perhaps both. Nathan recognized it because he had seen the same expression in successful people who lost everything and in ordinary people who kept going anyway. And this was not your plan. Emily shook her head once. No, silence returned. Then Nathan's phone vibrated again. Another message. This time it included a short summary from the investigator. Nathan read carefully. The investor had appeared around several complicated acquisition attempts over the last decade. Nothing illegal had ever been proven. Nothing public connected him directly to wrongdoing. Yet a pattern existed. Companies entered negotiations. Ownership structures changed unexpectedly. Control shifted. By the time anyone understood what happened, the paperwork was already complete. Nathan lowered the phone. A cold realization settled over him. Tonight had not been bad luck. It had been a carefully constructed opportunity. And if Emily had stayed silent, he might have walked directly into it. You were right, he said quietly. Emily looked surprised. About what? About all of it. For the first time that evening, Nathan saw genuine uncertainty in her eyes. Not uncertainty about the deal. About his words. as though she was unaccustomed to hearing them. Nathan stood and walked toward the window. "Do you know what is strange?" he asked. "What?" "I have spent years paying experts to tell me what they think." Rain tapped softly against the glass. Tonight, the most valuable insight came from someone nobody noticed. Emily looked away. Nathan watched the city lights below. Then he said something that surprised even himself. "I think that has happened to you more than once." Emily did not answer, but the silence that followed told him he was closer to the truth than ever before. Emily turned her attention back to the rain-covered window. For a few moments, she seemed unwilling to answer. Nathan did not push. He had spent years negotiating with executives, investors, and politicians. He knew the difference between someone hiding information and someone protecting old wounds. Eventually, Emily spoke. People notice titles. Her voice was soft. They notice offices, degrees, and business cards. Nathan listened carefully, but they rarely notice people. The words settled into the room. Simple, honest, difficult to argue with. Emily folded her hands lightly in front of her. A waitress can hear things that a consultant never will. Nathan raised an eyebrow. Because nobody pays attention to her. Exactly. Another flash of lightning brightened the skyline for an instant. The storm continued rolling across the city. Down below, yellow taxis moved through wet streets like streams of gold. Nathan found himself wondering how many times Emily had been overlooked. Judging by her reaction, more times than he could count. His phone vibrated again. This time it was not a message. It was a call. Nathan glanced at the screen. The private investigator. He answered immediately. "Tell me." The investigator did not waste time. "I found a connection." Nathan straightened. Emily watched quietly. "Go ahead." The investor is not operating alone. Nathan's expression hardened. "Keep talking." Several individuals involved in previous acquisitions appear linked through consulting groups and intermediary firms. Nathan walked slowly toward the far side of the conference room. "How confident are you?" "Very." The investigator paused. "There is something else." Nathan waited. A few years ago, someone submitted an anonymous risk assessment regarding one of those firms. Nathan frowned. "Anonymous?" "Yes." "Did anyone follow up?" "Apparently not." The report disappeared into a review archive. Nathan glanced toward Emily. Something about the timing felt strange. "Who wrote it?" "Nobody knows." Nathan ended the call after gathering a few more details. Then he stood completely still. A memory surfaced. 5 years earlier, one of his companies had avoided a costly international partnership after an obscure internal report raised concerns nobody else had identified. The report had arrived anonymously. At the time, Nathan never learned who submitted it. He only remembered that the analysis had been unusually detailed, almost obsessive in its precision. He slowly turned toward Emily. "I need to ask you something." She met his gaze. "All right. 5 years ago, did you ever submit a risk assessment involving overseas consulting firms?" Emily's expression changed. "Barely." Yet Nathan noticed. A tiny shift. The smallest hesitation. Then it disappeared. "Why would you ask that?" Nathan felt his pulse quicken. "Because someone did." Emily looked away. Silence stretched across the room. Outside, rain slid down the glass in long silver trails. "That was a long time ago," she finally said. Nathan stared at her. "It was you." She did not answer directly. Some warnings are easier to give when nobody knows your name. Nathan felt genuinely stunned. Not because she confirmed it. Because she did not need to. The truth was already there, hidden inside the silence. He thought about the anonymous report, the forgotten warning, the deal his company never signed. Then he thought about tonight. Another warning, another deal avoided, another moment when Emily Carter noticed what everyone else missed. Nathan slowly sat down. For perhaps the first time in years, he felt humbled. Not by a competitor, not by a market crash, not by an investor, by a waitress who kept seeing the truth before anyone else. Emily looked toward the conference room door. "You should go back out there." Nathan frowned. "Why?" "Because people are waiting for answers." Nathan smiled faintly. "And what about you?" Emily reached for the door handle. "I still have tables to serve." Before Nathan could respond, she opened the door and stepped into the hallway. Then she disappeared into the hotel crowd once again, leaving him with a question he could no longer ignore. Who exactly was Emily Carter? The conference room felt strangely empty after Emily left. Nathan remained seated for several moments, staring at the closed door. Around him sat polished wood, expensive glass, and documents worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Yet none of those things held his attention anymore. His thoughts remained fixed on a waitress carrying trays through a crowded hotel. 5 years ago, an anonymous report had protected one of his companies from a costly mistake. Tonight, the same woman had quietly prevented another one. The realization settled heavily in his mind. Not because of the money involved, because of what it revealed. How many times had people like Emily been ignored simply because nobody bothered to look beyond a uniform? Nathan eventually stood and returned to the dining room. Conversations immediately stopped when he appeared. Investors watched him carefully. Attorneys straightened in their chairs. The atmosphere had changed. Confidence had been replaced by uncertainty. Nathan walked calmly to the head of the table. The investor near the window looked composed, but Nathan noticed something he had missed earlier. The man was watching reactions instead of participating in them. Emily had been right. Once he saw it, he could not unsee it. "Ladies and gentlemen," Nathan said evenly, "the signing will not take place tonight." A wave of surprise moved through the room. Some people looked frustrated. Others looked confused. The investor near the window forced a polite smile. "May I ask why?" Nathan met his gaze. "Additional review is required." The investor nodded slowly. "That is unfortunate." Nathan noticed something subtle. Not disappointment. Calculation. The man immediately began evaluating alternatives. Exit routes. Future conversations. Different opportunities. It was exactly the behavior Emily had described. The meeting ended 30 minutes later. Guests filtered toward elevators and private cars waiting beneath the rain. One by one, they disappeared into the Manhattan night. Nathan remained behind. His legal team continued reviewing documents upstairs. His assistant offered to arrange transportation. Nathan declined. Instead, he found himself walking through the quiet corridors of the hotel. He passed conference rooms, empty lounges, marble hallways reflecting warm golden light. Eventually, he reached the restaurant level. It was nearly midnight now. Most guests had gone home. A pianist played softly in the corner. Glasses clinked occasionally. Conversations drifted through the air like distant echoes. Then Nathan saw her. Emily stood beside a table near the far wall, clearing dishes left behind by a family finishing dessert. She moved with the same quiet efficiency as before. No audience. No recognition. No sign that she had just influenced the outcome of a major corporate negotiation. Nathan watched from a distance. Something about the scene felt strangely powerful. Most people spent their lives trying to be noticed. Emily seemed perfectly comfortable being overlooked. When she finally turned and saw him, surprise flickered across her face. "Mr. Blackwell." "Nathan," he corrected gently. Emily smiled faintly. "Old habits." Nathan glanced around the nearly empty restaurant. "Do you have a few minutes?" She hesitated, then nodded. They sat at a small table near the window. Rain still traced patterns across the glass. Outside, the city shimmered beneath streetlights and traffic signals. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Nathan asked the question he had been carrying all evening. "Why did you stay anonymous?" Emily looked down at the coffee cup resting between her hands. Steam rose slowly into the air. "Because nobody was supposed to know." "Why?" She thought about the answer before speaking. "Because the information mattered more than the person delivering it." Nathan leaned back. The simplicity of her response stunned him. In his world, everyone wanted credit, recognition, visibility. Yet Emily seemed to operate by a completely different set of rules. "That is rare," he said quietly. Emily looked out toward the rain-soaked skyline. No, a soft smile appeared. "It is just easy to forget that truth does not become more valuable because someone important says it." Nathan stared at her. And in that moment, he realized the most remarkable thing about Emily Carter was not her intelligence. It was that she had never needed anyone else to recognize it. The restaurant grew quieter as midnight slipped into early morning. Most of the tables sat empty now. The pianist had finished his final song. Employees moved through the dining room collecting glasses and folding napkins. Outside, the rain had softened into a gentle mist that blurred the city lights beyond the windows. Nathan remained seated across from Emily. Neither seemed in a hurry to leave. For years, Nathan had measured value through numbers. Revenue, market share, growth, performance. Those metrics had helped him build an empire. Yet tonight, none of them explained the woman sitting across from him. Emily lifted her coffee cup and stared briefly at the steam rising into the air. You are thinking too much, she said. Nathan laughed quietly. That has been my profession for 20 years. Maybe that is the problem. The answer surprised him. Then again, most of her answers did. He glanced at the Swiss watch on his wrist. It was nearly 1 o'clock in the morning. There is something I have not asked. Emily looked up. What? What happened? She understood immediately. Not what happened tonight. What happened to her? The question lingered between them. For a moment Nathan thought she might refuse to answer. Instead, she looked toward the rain-covered skyline and spoke softly. Nothing dramatic. Nathan remained silent. I graduated. I worked. I built a career. She smiled faintly. Then life became complicated. Family. Emily nodded. My younger brother became sick. Nathan listened carefully. Everything changed after that. She did not describe details. She did not need to. The truth was already visible in the spaces between her words. Dreams postponed. Opportunities abandoned. Priorities rearranged. Nathan had seen similar stories before. Intelligent people stepping away from careers because someone they loved needed them more. Emily looked down at her hands. Eventually, I stopped chasing titles. Nathan felt an unexpected sense of respect. Not pity. Respect. Because sacrifice often went unnoticed. The world celebrated promotions and awards. It rarely celebrated the people who quietly put someone else first. Do you regret it? He asked. Emily considered the question. Then she slowly shook her head. No. The answer came without hesitation. Nathan smiled. You answered that quickly. Because I already know. A comfortable silence followed. Then Nathan reached into his jacket and removed a business card. He placed it on the table between them. Emily looked at it, but made no move to pick it up. What is this? She asked. An invitation. She raised an eyebrow. Nathan smiled. Not a job offer. Good. I assumed you would say that. Emily laughed softly. Nathan continued. It is simply my direct number. She looked surprised. Why? Nathan glanced toward the city beyond the glass. Because I spent years surrounding myself with people who agreed with me. He looked back at her. Tonight, the most valuable person in the room was the only one willing to quietly point out I was wrong. Emily stared at the card for several seconds. Finally, she picked it up. Not because it belonged to a billionaire. Because it was offered with sincerity. Outside, the rain finally stopped. The clouds began to drift apart above Manhattan. A few stars appeared between the buildings. Nathan stood first. Emily followed. I should finish closing. And I should stop interrupting your shift. They walked together toward the entrance of the restaurant. Then they paused. Not awkwardly. Simply recognizing the unusual path that had brought them there. Nathan extended his hand. Emily shook it. Thank you, he said. She smiled. For what? Nathan thought about the anonymous report. The warning. The conversation. The lesson. For speaking up. Emily released his hand. Someone had to. Nathan watched as she disappeared back into the quiet restaurant. Then he turned and walked toward the elevators. The city would wake up in a few hours. Markets would open. Meetings would begin. Deals would continue. Yet one thing had changed. Nathan Blackwell would never again assume that wisdom arrived wearing an expensive suit. Sometimes it arrived carrying a tray of coffee. Sometimes it spoke only one sentence. And sometimes the quietest voice in the room carried the truth everyone else had missed.